Kobe Kushner. I'm an analyst here at Red Cloud Securities. We're about to hear from Lawrence of Mountain Boy Minerals. This is a company with a portfolio of projects in BC. They've got a lot of ground in the Golden Triangle. They've been piecing together a large land package and they're systematically exploring it. And they think they might be onto a potentially large porphyry discovery. So Lawrence, you have about 15 minutes, which will follow with the 5 minutes of Q&A, give or take. Viewers, please feel free to ask your question at any time. And with that, Lawrence, take it away.
Thanks very much, Kobe. And thank you, everybody, for your interest in Mountain Boy. I think we've got a very, very interesting story here. I'll hit the highlights in the next few minutes and look forward to questions either in this session or offline in any format that you want to put questions to us. So as Kobe mentioned, we're focused on BC and in particular the Golden Triangle. We made a very conscious decision to focus exclusively on the Golden Triangle. We're experts in the area. We understand the geology. We know how to work up there and we know how to get deals done and all the rest of it. So exclusively focused on the Golden Triangle. Very small market value for a company that has as much on the go as we have. More than 20% of the shares are held by the management group. We're very committed. We're determined to make a success of this for our benefit as much as all the rest of the shareholders of the company. Very strong team, both geologically and in a business sense. I won't get into the details here, but to say that a team that knows how to get things done, that's had success in the past, and we're committed to making a huge success with Mountain Boy. So Golden Triangle, look, everybody that's investing in or ever has invested in the mining industry knows about the Golden Triangle. They know that it's incredibly richly endowed with minerals. The infrastructure has improved dramatically over the last few years. There's 2 mines now in production. They were permitted, brought to production in the normal time it would take for a project anywhere in the world. A 3rd mine will be coming on stream later this year. So at a high level, most people understand the Golden Triangle, but the reality is that very few people really understand the Golden Triangle and all that it has to offer. One of the groups that understands the Golden Triangle better than anybody is Crest Mining, which is Australia's largest gold producer. Over the last couple of years, Crest has invested $4 billion in the Golden Triangle. 2 years ago, they bought control of Red Chris. They've just taken over Pretium to get their hands on the Brucejack deposit. And why is a company like this investing 20% of the market value of the company in this one region? Well, the reason is pretty straightforward. The geology in the Golden Triangle is very much like the geology of their best mining project. The Cadia mine complex in Eastern Australia last year produced 765,000 ounces of gold. It generated $1.8 billion in operating profit. The all-in sustaining cost for Cadia last year was negative $109 per ounce. I'm sure most of you understand that the all-in sustaining cost for a gold mine is typically about $1,000 or over $1,000 an ounce. At Cadia, it was negative $109 per ounce. That is, the byproduct copper and silver from that mine covered all the operating cost, so they generated 765,000 ounces of gold for free. The key to that remarkable profitability is that Cadia is based on an alkalic porphyry deposit. Now, if you look around the world, where can you find alkalic porphyries? Obviously, the Lachlan Fold Belt, host to Cadia, in Philippines, in Greece, or British Columbia. Those are the areas in the world that host clusters of alkalic porphyries. This class of deposit is just emerging as a distinct type of metal deposit. So we're in contact with and heard the presentations of Dr. Alan Wilson, who's a recognized expert in this type of geology. And we are putting together a team of experts that understand alkalic porphyries because of the incredible potential of this type of deposit and the growing level of interest of alkalic porphyries among gold producers. So focused on the Golden Triangle, 6 projects, one of the largest property holders in the triangle. When I got involved 3 years ago, I made a conscious decision. I said, I want to get my arms around as much as I possibly can in this region because the geological prospectivity is better than anywhere on the planet. So we take a slightly different approach to a lot of companies. We bring new geological thinking to previous results. There's been a lot of work done in the triangle over the last few decades. We've pulled that information together, we look at it, we reprocess it, we rethink how it was interpreted, and we pull pieces together that gives us a view of the bigger picture. Now, to show what I mean by that bigger picture and smaller pieces, this is our telegraph project, the claim positions at one moment in time in June of 1991. So roughly the upper 3/4 of this map is what is now the telegraph project. You can see how lots of companies were looking at little pieces of it. And that picture changed year by year by year over a period of decades. We've pulled together results from work that was conducted by at least 50 companies working on what is now our telegraph property. If we step back for a moment, we can see that the telegraph project is located in an incredibly well-endowed mineral area in the middle of a large cluster of world-class porphyries. Just south of us or southeast of us here, and our properties are adjacent, is Shaft Creek, which Teck has been working on for many years. Teck and Newmont are joint venture partners on the Galore project just south of us. And then Newmont last year bought GT Gold to get their hands on the Saddle deposit. They paid $420 million to buy GT Gold. And then of course, Red Chris bought the new Crest deposit and are turning that into a big gold mine, which is projected to produce 300,000 ounces of gold per year once they complete their expansion. Just north of us is the Big Red. It's an earlier stage, but also looking like another highly prospective porphyry deposit. Now, looking at the telegraph project, that Gossan top center, which we call the Dock Main, that's what attracted the explorers into this region in the 1970s. They did a lot of work around here in the early 70s. They demonstrated that this is a big porphyry copper occurrence. There was a little bit of drilling done. We can't find the results of that drilling, but we know that obviously they didn't develop it into a mine. They looked at it as a standalone copper deposit, as was typical at that time in the 1970s. They didn't pay much attention to gold. In fact, we don't see any evidence that they even assayed for gold. So as a standalone copper deposit in a remote location in the 1970s, it didn't make it. They walked away from it, and not much happened until the late 80s. And we saw that map a moment ago of what the property looked like in the early 1990s. They came back. At this time, they were looking for gold. After the SNP and the SK discoveries, they were all over this region looking for gold and gold-silver deposits. They found a lot of gold and silver all over what is now the telegraph property. But again, it was small blocks of property. They were looking at individual occurrences. They didn't really get a good sense of what they had. And none of those occurrences made it as a standalone deposit. So it was passed on again. In 2004, a geologist who had worked up here early in his career as a provincial government geologist mapping the area, he came back and he staked this area around the work that was done in the 1970s. And so that area, Dock Main, is here. The property that was staked by, and it was Charlie Gregg, who was the VP exploration for GT Gold, certainly somebody that knows the geology of this region. He brought in a joint venture partner, and they did a lot of really good work. Most of it focused on Dock, and a little bit of work on trend to the southeast, but it was right up against a property line as it existed at that time. And they didn't really focus much work down to the southeast. They did some geophysics down there. They did some IP and magnetotellurics, got some really promising results, but it was never followed up. So over a period of a decade, over this entire property that you're looking at here, there was a grand total of 2 drill holes, both of which were drilled on the Dock target, right up in this area. And this just a sample of the work that was done. So all kinds of airborne and ground geophysics was done in this area. They did geochemistry. They had a pretty good sense of the geology, at least as the geology was understood at that time. But they were limited by the property line. So that black line at the bottom was the property as it existed when this work was being done. So on the basis of all that work, they put in 2 drill holes, less than 900 meters of drilling in total. Geological perspective, the results in those drill holes were holes of gold and copper in the drill hole and some silver. But from an investor perspective, those holes were seen as a miss, and there was not much work done on this property after those 2 drill holes. The junior was not able to raise any further financing, and the project was effectively put on the back burner until Mountain Boy came along. Last year, we acquired an option on this property, and we did 4 other option and or acquisition agreements to pull together this big property, and we staked the intervening ground. We now have 200 square kilometers covering a large porphyry copper gold occurrence. You can see the kind of results that were generated over the years. The results on the left are from our work last summer. A lot of that work was confirming the earlier work, but we also found and sampled new occurrences. A lot of samples, more than 1% copper, more than 1 gram per ton gold. In a porphyry copper gold environment, getting those kind of samples on surface over square kilometers is extremely encouraging. So what are we doing at the moment? Well, the first thing is trying to squeeze as much information as we possibly can out of all the work that's been done to date. We're pulling a team, and we have experts on the project right now that are looking into this from the perspective of this being a big porphyry, and in particular of it being an alkalic porphyry. And there are subtleties in the alteration patterns and the halos and the extent of the mineralization surrounding an alkalic porphyry compared to other porphyries. We've got an airstrip and a camp on the property that we used previously. Our plan this year is to rehabilitate the airstrip and the camp, use that as our base. We want to conduct a big program on this property this year. We're very close to getting the permits needed to drill it. We certainly expect we're going to have permits for drilling this year. and that will be an important part of our, certainly on our wish list of what we plan to do this year. Now, why are we so excited about this? And look, I don't want to suggest for a moment that we think we've got anything like a KSM here, but I've put the footprint of the KSM beside our DOC trend. And you can see on here the Kerr, the Sulphurettes, the Mitchell, and Iron Cap beside our DOC, our Southeast Target, and our DOC X. We've got roughly the same size mineralized footprint. And for anybody that's not familiar with KSM, 107 million ounces of gold, 600 million ounces of silver, 46 billion pounds of copper, certainly a target that's worth going after. And that's our intention, is to really focus on Telegraph. Now, we have 6 other targets in the Golden Triangle, all of which have large scale potential. And for anybody interested in the balance of the slideshow, which I think is on your website, we'll have it on our site very soon. I've just finished putting this slide deck together. The original Mountain Boy silver mine, the heart of our American Creek project, high-grade silver mine, a drill hole in 2006 with 5 kilos of silver over 5 meters. We've had multi-kilo silver values on surface, a trend that goes for at least 4 kilometers. BA, it was drilled from 2006 to 2010 as an SK lookalike. They found a large lead zinc silver occurrence in one small area of what we now recognize as a 12-kilometer VMS trend. A lot of potential there that's untested. Other projects, have a look at them, all very, very interesting projects, but I think probably here I should turn it back over to you folks, and I'm glad to answer whatever questions you want to put forward. So Kobe, do you have any questions, or anyone else with questions?
Yeah, Lawrence, thanks for that presentation. You definitely sold me on the Golden Triangle and why we should be exploring for gold and copper there. What is an alkalic porphyry as opposed to typical porphyries, the ones that we're more used to? And why does this shift to this new type of porphyry, why is that so significant? How does that change your exploration plans going forward?
Well, look, you and I should have an offline discussion on this. I'd love to get into it, and I'll bring our experts in. But just at a very high level, for the people here who are mostly investors, I would think, alkalic porphyry has a higher component of the alkalic metals, sodium and potassium, as opposed to the calcium in the feldspars. The implication is that it was derived from deeper in the crust or subcrustal into the upper mantle, and for that reason contains a higher metal concentration generally. I don't personally understand exactly how that correlates to higher gold content, but just they are correlated with having significantly higher gold contents. Now, not all the porphyries in the triangle are alkalic. Most of them are calc-alkalic or subalkalic on the borderline. But pretty much all the porphyries in the triangle are certainly skewed toward a much higher ratio of gold to copper than is a typical porphyry. So for that reason, they're very interesting to the gold companies, which is why you have Newcrest and Newmont up there big time. And what's really important is that the alteration halos are a little bit different. So if you go into an alkalic porphyry with a classic porphyry alteration halo in mind, you might miss it. And I suspect that's what's happened with our Telegraph project, that they didn't really appreciate the subtleties, the distinctions with the alkalic, and recognize that potential for the higher gold content.
And in terms of how that changes your exploration plans compared to what the old timers were doing, does this mean, like, instead of sampling for for just copper and following the copper, now you're going to be looking at the gold?
Well, we're looking at both. We've seen here, and it appears in others, there is a correlation between the copper, the gold, and the silver. But it's just that in general, there's a higher ratio of gold to copper. So we can use that, but it's in the really subtle aspects of trace element geochemistry and in alteration halos. So we're using shortwave infrared, SWIR, an analysis to look at the alteration to get a much deeper understanding of the alteration halos with the alkalic porphyry model in mind as a tool that will help us vector.